Picture this. You're a 7-year-old kid at the start of 2nd grade, and your teacher tells you to read a book for an assignment. What do you choose? A. A long story with no pictures. B. An equally long nonfiction book about a historical event. Or C. A much shorter, picture-filled, relatable book that's currently in pop culture, and your friends have been talking about it. You'd probably pick C, right? This was the exact question that my peers and I had been given, and of course most of us chose book C, Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney. This is an illustrated children's novel released in 2007 that later grew into a large book series. The book delves into the day-to-day life of middle schooler, Greg Heffley, as he goes through a mix of relatable and funny experiences, with the companionship of his supposedly good friend Riley. As stated earlier, I first read this novel in 2nd grade and fell in love with the series. I bought a few of them and even talked with the library at my school to make sure that they purchase each new book in the series. I looked up to the main character, not just because he was older, but because he seemed like a relatable and popular guy, traits I wanted to imitate. Remembering this, I decided to return to the novel with a new understanding of the impact literature can have on children, and I was shocked to notice that there were many negative traits that could have impacted me and all of the other students who adored this story just as much. In this analysis, I will show how Diary of a Wimpy Kid had achieved a large impact, and the negative ideas it enforced caused a deep enmity within my generation. To start, while the book was released in 2007, Jeff originally started working on a webcomic of the same name in 2004. This was intended for adults as a way to look back and reminisce on their middle school days. However, a few years later, he chose to switch directions and began on a longer, more coherent novel intended for children. Throughout this time, he chose to make his drawings simpler, to the point of being almost well-decorated stick figures. This made it easier for children to understand what was going on, while also being relatable to what they would draw. That's the main reason why the book grew so fast. The relatability of it made kids grow a connection to it. Seeing this kid who is either equal or slightly older be the main character and go through real experiences that they also went through helped promote the book in their eyes. Children's books have had a large impact on those who read them. They can help instill morals and teach the difference between right and wrong, but over time, they can also form biases and ideals within children that hurt society. In Diary of a Wimpy Kid, such rapid growth led to many kids learning negative power dynamics and harmful norms. The first impact the novel communicates is toxic masculinity. Throughout the story, Greg is accompanied by his best friend, Riley. This kid is seen as much more sensitive than, and not as competitive as most of the other characters, and is in turn bullied a lot. However, in most literature, the main character would step in to help or at least console their friend, but in this book, Greg doesn't help. Instead, he's the one bullying him. In the first 15 pages of the book, Greg already begins insulting him just because Riley doesn't care about wanting girls. This insecurity can be seen as a strength by children and lead to a toxic mentality where they believe the most aggressive and dominant people are better. Another impact the story has on kids is learning to mock those who are different as weird. There's another interesting character in this story named Fregley. He's described as being simply strange, as he's jittery and overall very sheltered. Greg does, however, try to hang out with him, but only as a way to mess with Riley. Even while face-to-face with Fregley, Greg mocks him, calling him weird, and does everything he can to just get away from this kid he's trying to be friends with. This incident can cause children to believe that those who are different should only be used as figurative punching bags to mess with and make fun of, instead of becoming actual friends. However, throughout all of this, Greg paints himself as the good guy, confusing the unknowing audience into thinking that this unreliable narrator is doing all of this in good faith. Diary of a Wimpy Kid grew to be a major success and a memorable book for most children, but in doing so, it subconsciously taught them about toxic masculinity and that people who are different or more welcoming should be seen as weird. It can be argued that these impacts are natural within children as they grow up, but exposing them to these negative actions at such a young age influenced them into thinking that they were okay to replicate. After years and years of these issues plaguing the younger generation, I look back on my original choice, between the 2 boring books and the 1 interesting one, and I realized that that wasn't all there was to offer. If I'd just given the other books a chance, I would have still been forced to read, but I at least could have begun to think deeper and possibly find a different, more beneficial passion. However, the novel instead taught a very sad message, that you should always treat others as weird and only judge a book by its cover. Thank you.